Across the world, success tends to look different. In some places, it's a corner office. In others, it's a championship trophy, a sold-out concert, or a company built from nothing. The paths are different. The ambitions are different too. Yet something curious happens when you start looking closely. The same watch keeps appearing. You might notice it in a finance office in New York, on the wrist of an athlete walking onto a championship court, on a musician stepping out of a studio late at night, in airports, boardrooms, victory stages. Different industries, different lives. But very often, the same small object sits quietly on the wrist. A Rolex. People don't choose it because it's the rarest watch in the world. It isn't. And it's certainly not the most complicated. They choose it because of what it represents. Over time, Rolex has become something more than a watchmaker. It has become a signal that something has been achieved. Every year, Rolex produces a little over 1 million watches. In the world of luxury goods, that is an enormous number. Yet demand still stretches far beyond supply. Waiting lists form. Authorized dealers carefully control who receives certain models. But the real reason Rolex dominates the watch industry isn't just production or revenue. It's consistency. In many places, luxury objects carry different messages depending on local tastes. A car that represents prestige in one country might signal something entirely different somewhere else. Rolex is unusual. In Manila, a Rolex might celebrate a promotion. In London, it marks a career milestone. In Dubai, it signals financial success. In Lagos, it represents transformation and upward mobility. Different stories, same symbol. Very few luxury objects travel across cultures so easily. But Rolex managed something remarkable. It created a watch that communicates achievement almost anywhere in the world, without needing translation. Certain Rolex models didn't become famous through advertising. They became famous through culture. Take the Submariner. In the early 1950s, it was simply a professional diving tool designed to survive underwater pressure. Built for explorers and divers who needed reliability beneath the surface. Then, cinema changed everything. In 1962, Sean Connery wore a Submariner while playing James Bond. The watch suddenly appeared on a character who embodied confidence, danger, and sophistication. It stopped being just equipment. It became part of a persona. Another transformation happened with the Daytona. For years, it was a slow seller, admired mostly by racing enthusiasts. Then, actor Paul Newman's personal Daytona appeared at auction decades later. When it sold for nearly $18 million, collectors rushed to rediscover the model. A watch once overlooked suddenly became legendary. Some Rolex models became symbols of adventure. Others became symbols of authority. The Datejust is one of them. Introduced in the 1940s, it was designed to be balanced, elegant, and practical. But over time, it quietly became the watch worn by diplomats, executives, and political leaders around the world. Figures such as Winston Churchill and Dwight Eisenhower wore Rolex watches during moments that shaped modern history. Then came the day-date. Unlike many other Rolex models, the day-date was crafted only in precious metals like gold or platinum, nothing less. The watch also displayed both the date and the full day of the week spelled out on the dial. It became known as the President watch, not because Rolex named it that way, but because so many political leaders adopted it. US presidents, global statesmen, and influential figures often chose the same understated design. A watch that didn't shout, but quietly carried authority. Walk through the financial districts of cities like New York, London, or Hong Kong, and you may notice a pattern. On trading floors, in boardrooms, and inside investment offices, Rolex appears again and again. Not because finance professionals are particularly interested in horology, but because the watch communicates something useful. In environments where trust and credibility matter, appearance becomes part of the conversation. Clothing, posture, tone of voice. Every detail contributes to the impression someone leaves. Rolex fits neatly into that world. It isn't overly flashy, yet it isn't anonymous either. It sits comfortably between wealth and restraint. For many people in finance, that balance is exactly the point. A Rolex suggests stability, discipline, long-term success rather than sudden fortune. It signals that someone has achieved something and intends to remain there. Rolex also built deep connections with the world of elite sport. Tennis, golf, motor racing, endurance competitions. In many of these arenas, the brand became the official timekeeper, quietly positioning itself beside moments of victory and precision. Championships at Wimbledon, Formula One races, and major golf tournaments all feature the Rolex crown beside the scoreboard. One of the most recognizable partnerships developed with Roger Federer. For more than 2 decades, Federer wore Rolex throughout some of the most historic matches in tennis. Those images repeated year after year. Slowly, they became part of sporting memory. When audiences think back to certain moments of triumph on the court, the Rolex logo often sits somewhere in the background, almost unnoticed. Yet over time, that quiet presence reinforced a powerful association. Precision, excellence, victory. In finance, Rolex signals stability. In hip-hop culture, it tells a very different story. Here, the watch often represents transformation. For many artists, success in music means rising from difficult circumstances into global recognition. Along that journey, certain symbols begin to appear again and again. Cars, chains, designer clothing, and frequently, a Rolex. The watch shows up repeatedly in lyrics, music videos, and album imagery. It becomes shorthand for arrival. Proof that the artist has crossed into a new world of opportunity and influence. But the deeper meaning goes beyond money. For many performers, the Rolex represents the distance traveled. Years of work, struggle, and ambition compressed into a single object on the wrist. It becomes a visible reminder that the path upward was real, and that the destination has finally been reached. Despite producing more than 1 million watches each year, Rolex remains surprisingly difficult to buy. Walk into any authorized dealer and ask for certain models, and the answer is often the same. There is a waiting list. Sometimes the wait stretches to months, sometimes years. Part of this comes from careful distribution. Rolex tightly controls how watches move through its retail network, ensuring that supply rarely overwhelms demand. But scarcity has another effect. It turns purchasing into a pursuit. When something is easy to obtain, the excitement fades quickly. When access requires patience, relationships, or persistence, the object begins to feel more significant. Rolex understands this dynamic well. By maintaining limited availability, the brand keeps desire alive. The watch becomes more than a product. It becomes a small achievement in itself. And the moment someone finally receives it often feels like a milestone. Long before Rolex became a symbol of wealth or culture, it became closely tied to exploration. In 1953, climbers attempting to reach the summit of Mount Everest carried Rolex watches during the historic expedition that first reached the top of the world. Only a few years later, Another Rolex prototype traveled in the opposite direction, descending nearly 11 kilometers into the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. The watch survived both extremes. Rolex also became closely linked with aviation, and during the golden age of international air travel, pilots from Pan American Airways wore the GMT Master to track multiple time zones across long transcontinental flights. These moments embedded the brand into stories of human ambition, not as decoration, but as a companion to people pushing the limits of what was possible. And perhaps that connection explains why the watch still appears so often in moments of achievement. Because in many ways, Rolex built its identity alongside ambition itself.